All right, 1 second here. All right, welcome everyone. Holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. Again, want to welcome everyone. Holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. And said last week, week before, see if we're going to finish it. We're in verse 34. Again, we're in the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. Chapter 16, verse 34. And finish up the Orach Chaim Makadosh. Torah says, I says, lachem l'chukas olam, l'chaper, abnei Yisrael, mikol chatoisam, so Torah says, this shall be your eternal decree, right? It should be for you an eternal decree. To bring atonement upon the children of Israel for all their sins once a year, right? In other words, it's all about Yom Kippur. The high priest is going to go in the Holy of Holies once a year. And Aaron did as Hashem commanded Moshe. And Aaron did exactly what Moshe said. And again, we spoke about that. He didn't wear the garments for his own greatness. He's fulfilling the desire of the king, right? He's fulfilling what the king wanted, etc. We spoke about what Yom Kippur atones for, and it's for all generations, even if we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, right? Even if we don't have a temple, it doesn't really matter, right? Yom Kippur is going to come and atone, right, as we've spoken about before. So here the Orach Chaim Makadosh says, he says, V'yaska Asher Tziva Hashem. And he did as God commanded, right? Aaron did as God commanded to Moshe. Comes on the Medrash. Orach Chaim Makadosh says, what's it talking about? What's it talking about? It's talking about the shvach, the praise of Aaron HaKohen. What's the shvach? What's the praise over here? What's the praise? But Aaron himself did not do it for greatness. He didn't do everything he's being told to do over here, so he can wear these fancy vestments, the gold vestments and all that. Why did he do it? What was the command? Sorry, that's the answer. Why did he do it? Because God commanded, right? He's doing the mitzvah of Hashem, right? The mitzvah of the king, right? As Rashi pointed out, he's doing the mitzvah of the king. So, we spoke about that. That's why do we do what we do? Because God commanded it. We have to understand it. We have to work hard to try and understand it. But bottom line is, why do we do it? Divine command. I could say, Aaron's the high priest. He has to keep changing clothing. He has to keep going to the mikvah, all these things. It goes in the Holy of Holies. You might think you might get a big ego. You might think you might be conceited. Because look what he's doing. Look at all the great things that he's doing. All the great spiritual things. Yeah, but why does he do it? Because God commanded him. He's not thinking he's better than anyone else. He's doing it because God commanded. That's it. So that's the praise of Aaron HaKohen. Right now we saw as Rashi explains as well. It comes on Orach Chaim Makadosh and he says, okay, that's the praise of Aaron. Very good. But it's also a shvach. It's also a praise for Moshe Rabbeinu. Why is it a praise for Moshe Rabbeinu? Because he says over here, it's also a praise for Moshe Rabbeinu that Hashem didn't just command Aaron, he commanded Moshe also. Right? He commanded both to praise him as well. And the Torah testifies that this didn't change. In other words, God gave the command to Aaron, God gave the command to Moshe, didn't change. Right? There's no change over here. And everything was that was said by Moshe. It says by the Ber Hashem el Moshe. Lay more. God spoke to Moshe saying, or Aaron saying. So when God spoke to Moshe, can't change anything. Right? Not allowed to change anything. Right? Even something that is what we're going to call, what we'll call by a hair's breadth. Yeah, by chut asar. Can't change anything. And that we learn. So that we learn throughout the Torah. Everything said from God to Moshe exactly what that is. How did God speak? God doesn't have a, God doesn't have a mouth, right? We're not going to anthropomorphize here, whatever it's called, right? We're not going to give him human characteristics, right? Anthropomorphics. Over here, it doesn't have a mouth. Even though Torah says God an outstretched arm, right? It means power, right? God's power, but God's infinite. God doesn't have a form, right? In general. What do we say over here? Everything came from God. Whatever that speech was, like a person speaks to a friend, that's how Moshe spoke to God. He spoke to him whenever he wanted. But Moshe didn't change anything. Right? It came out of God's mouth, so to speak. God gave this person life, gives everybody life. And that's how it works. Right? That's how it works. Now, I'm going to say, what's this level of speech? How do we understand it? Okay. Right? That's the whole question. Right? That's for the Kabbalists that'll be for the Kabbalists to determine, what that is, and how that works. Okay. That's not for us. That's not for us. However, Moshe understood what God said. Right? Moshe reached almost the 40th level of understanding. Right? So certainly on the level over here, just one level of understanding he didn't have, in this world. But what's crucial over here? What's crucial, the Or Chaim HaKadosh here says? What's crucial is nothing changed. Now the Torah testifies nothing changed because the Torah says, Kasher Tziv Hashem is Moshe. God commanded Moshe. Moshe did what God said. Doesn't change. Now, some will say, but weren't there discrepancies? Weren't there discrepancies, let's say, in how things are spelled? Right? So maybe the Torah's changed. Right? I spoke about that when I spoke about oral law. How does that work? Is it the same? Doesn't change. Now, what happened is there could be things that maybe spelled wrong. Yeah, and even if they're spelled wrong, if it doesn't change the meaning, you don't correct it. You don't have any reason to correct it. So what happened? You can say, oh, it changed. No. They found a whole bunch of Torah scrolls, and they went after the majority, right? Torah says, chapter 23, Book of Exodus, verse 2. You go after the majority for good, right? Just like in a rabbinical court, 3 rabbinic court judges, you go after the majority, 2 against 1. Even if the one is greater than both of them combined, doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. You go after the majority. Now, that being the case, so you have a bunch of Sefer Torahs, and you see this discrepancy in some spelling. So what do? You go according to the majority. Now, why is that called? Why would we say that's not the Torah change? Right? Why would we make such a statement? Because throughout the generations, been in exile. In case anyone doesn't notice, we've been in exile, we've been burned and gassed and all this, thrown out of the land. So, there are times where they forgot spelling. They forgot how to spell certain things. Sometimes they put an aleph at the end of a word. Sometimes they put the A, whatever it is. That doesn't change the meaning. Because if it would change the meaning, what do I have? I got a problem. That's why when someone's reading the Torah on Shabbos or during the week, doesn't matter. Someone's reading the Torah and he made a mistake, and the mistake changes the meaning of the word, they correct it. right? And they have to say it right, or they have to chant it right. Let's say better, right? They have to chant it right. Okay, so that being the case, right? That being the case, you're gonna say, but isn't that embarrassing someone? Right? We say many times, you're not allowed to embarrass someone in public. Embarrassing someone in public is like you're murdering them, because the Gemara says they turn white, then they turn red. So it's like murder. You have a difference of opinion between Rabbeinu Yonah, the Rambam, and others, that for murder you don't get the death penalty according to most rabbinic authorities. Yeah, this is an offshoot of murder. So many rabbinical authorities say also don't get the death penalty. It's an offshoot of murder. It's not murder itself. Comes on Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah in Shari Tshuva gets to repent and says, no, person got embarrassed in public. That's murder. Right? Far from me, come out against Rabbeinu Yonah. It's very hard to understand. It's not murder itself. Yeah. You didn't kill someone in cold blood. Yeah. So Rabbeinu Yonah says, why is it like murder? Anyone's ever been embarrassed in public, it's like, yeah, they want to go in a rock and under a rock and hide. They want to go somewhere else. And it's like they've been destroyed. It's like murder. So how can you? So what's the point? So how can you correct somebody if they misread the Torah? How can you correct them? What's simple meaning? Simple meaning is if it changed the meaning of the word, you correct them. That's not embarrassing. They have to say it right. They have to get it right. So if they have to get it right, that's not embarrassing over here. Totally not embarrassing. They have to do what they need to do. You can't pronounce it wrong. 100% can't pronounce it wrong. So it's big responsibility, right? It's a decree of Ezra. Mentioned this before. It's a decree of Ezra. You have to hear the Torah 3 times during the week. Can't go 2 days without hearing Torah, hearing words of Torah in public. It's got to be a public reading. It's Monday, Thursday, and on Shabbos. Now, if there's a festival or a fast day that comes out during the week, you also read it. You also read the Torah in public, right? If you have 10 men, you have 10 Jewish men there. Very good. But Ezra said, he made this decree. You don't go more than 2 days without hearing the Torah, right? So you got Monday, you got Thursday, you have Shabbos. So here it's interesting. Or Chaim HaKadosh here says, you learn out from over here, came from the word of Moshe, came from the mouth of Moshe, and then change it, even within a hair's breadth. Yeah, but what could I have said? What could I have said very simply? The Torah says later that what? The Torah says you can't add and subtract. So obviously it's not allowed that to change anything. Right? What's he coming to add here? We know in the book of Deuteronomy it says Moses can't add it. Moses says himself can't add or subtract to the Torah. Comes on the Orach Chaim HaKadosh and says, we're going to from over here. You're not going to change anything. Right? In other words, you don't have to come on to that. You don't have to come on and tell me later on, I understand you can't change the Torah. Very good. Can't add or subtract. Why don't you say that over here? Why doesn't the Orach Chaim HaKadosh say it over here? Because he's making a different point. And the point is, the Torah said over here, Torah said, Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe, just like God over here commanded Moses. And we saw before that what? That Aaron HaKohen is doing whatever he's told to do, not for his own benefits, not for his own greatness, not because he's wearing these great clothing. Why is he doing what he's doing? Because God said to Moshe, Moshe said to Aaron, or God said to Moshe and Aaron. So here the Torah testifies the fact that it says Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe, just like God commanded Moses over here. Aaron HaKohen is not doing what he's doing, not for his own glory, not to make himself look great, not to be conceited. He's doing what we call the Kayim Mitzvahs Hashem. He's keeping what God said, like Rashi said. But the point is not the fact that you're not allowed to add or subtract. The point is the Torah doesn't change. That's the point. The Torah never changes. How many times I hear in the conservative movement, Dalva Shalom of blessed memory, because it's basically dead. No one's really told them yet, but it's basically dead. How many times did I hear them say, you got to go with the times? Times change. Times change, Torah changes. Right? That's one of their main tenets. You got to go with the flow. Problem is, Torah doesn't say that. Right? This is a very good example. What the Torah saying? Beginning of the verse, it says, this is going to be a statute forever, right? Or an ordinance, how they translate it. It's going to be an eternal decree. What does it mean, an eternal decree? Come on, all the Karaites out there should be applauding. What's an eternal decree? It means forever. As we say in Boston, it means forever. Doesn't change. Commentaries ask, we don't have Beis Hamikdash. We don't have a temple anymore. Right? So what do you do? What do you do by Yom Kippur? Can't go in the Holy of Holies. Right? Even if we have the Temple Mount in our hands, the Israelis and the Arabs are not going to let you go up there to do anything. Just about to be a provocation, according to them, without getting into politics. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a temple, you don't have a Beis Hamikdash, you have tshuva, you have repentance. Repentance always helps. Right? There's no question. Repentance on Yom Kippur helps even more. Well, why is it all being done? Why? So, first of all, this is forever. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. You're gonna tell me we don't have Beis Hamikdash? Okay. We're not. So what do we do? We still have repentance. Still gonna have Yom Kippur. But the Torah itself does not change. Right? That is the point over here. Even if you want to tell me within a hair's breadth, this isn't something secular Jews don't want to hear. And it really makes them cringe. Why does it make them cringe? Why aren't they keeping it? Torah says it's forever. Torah says you can't change it. Right? Like we see later. Book of Deuteronomy, you can't add or subtract. They don't care. Essentially, it's not about Jewish law. It's not like finding one of the footnotes in, the old German or whatever. Sometimes they say, I got a proof over here. No, I don't have any proof. They want to do what they want to do. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They investigated it. They didn't investigate it. This is what my heart tells me. Right? Well, I heard a number of times. I was in the States last year. That's what my heart tells me. Okay. And you got any proof for what your heart tells you? Any sources? I mean, I was very nice. Any sources? Anything? No. That's what my heart says. You know what that means? That means I can do what I want. That means I can justify, do whatever I want. Right? There's one small problem. Right? What's the problem? Torah says I can't do that. Torah says I'm not allowed to do that. Torah says it's forever. It doesn't change. What gives me the right to change? Even decrees that were made, the Gemara says, even if they got a problem with this decree that's made by the rabbis, when could I change it? When you have a greater rabbinical court in number and greater in knowledge. Then you can overturn a decree. Then you can overturn a decree. But guess what? We don't have that. Certainly not greater knowledge. No question about that. They can't change it. These are the decrees that are made. So they're not changing the Torah. They're explaining what it means. Right? As we mentioned many times, we'll see. We get there in next number of chapters. Speaking about the holidays, we'll see. We'll see clear. No definitions. The Torah itself does not give definitions. Torah says, do this, don't do that. The law book. Because if it gave definitions, you never finish it. Torah would be a million pages long. Right? Just, we can just do, stay in Genesis. We can be there forever. Some say like this, some say like that. How do you understand it? Kabbalah and this. You never finish. You never ever finish. You won't know what any of the mitzvahs are. You get stuck in creation. But the point over here is, let's not lose the point here. The point is, as we said, the Torah doesn't change. The Torah will not change. Can't change. Right? And we have proof for that. Because God himself said a few weeks back, Moses, my trusted prophet, he said that in front of everyone. Moses, my trusted prophet, and whatever he says goes. Whatever he tells you, that's what you got to do. Because he's getting it from me. So Moses is not adding or subtracting. Got to listen to what he says. Can't do whatever you want. God spoke to Moshe. Moshe spoke to us. Spoke to the Jewish people. Spoke to Aaron, the Jewish people, whatever. And gave it over. It doesn't change. There are things that, a lot of things in the Torah need explanation. Okay? So there, we got a running commentary. That we have oral law for, to explain what it means. Right? One example, the Torah says by tzitzis. It says by the Shema. It says you got to put totafot beinei necho. In the Torah, and it's translated, what are totafot, frontlets between your eyes. So I got two questions. One is, what are frontlets? Second question is, what does it mean between your eyes? Does between your eyes mean right here? Does between your eyes mean here? Does it mean here? Right? Soft spot of a baby, right? Where the brain is. Torah doesn't tell me. Yeah, let's go back to the first question. Totafot, it's not even a Hebrew word. It's two words combined in an African language, Coptic language. Rashi says. Needs explanation, bottom line. Torah needs explanation. They're changing the Torah. So Deuteronomy chapter 17 says, got to listen to Kohen and Levite in every generation. And what they say, left is right, right is left. What's the answer? You got to listen to them. If you don't listen to them, what's the status? What's the punishment? Death. Very cheeky. Yeah. In other words, they understood we want to have power. So we're going to say, if you don't do what we say, you get death penalty. There's a way to hold on to power. Scare people. Yeah, but obviously it's a divine command. So who are the Kohanim and the Levites in every generation? Those are the rabbis. Right? So they're not changing anything, they're explaining what it means. That's why we have oral law, to explain exactly what it means. Because if you didn't have oral law, we would never understand we never understand anything. Yeah, you need oral law. And even you're going to tell me, okay, we understand frontlets between your eyes or tefillin. How many laws are in tefillin? Thousands of laws. How they're made. Parchment, what goes in the tefillin. A number of these things the Gemara says is halacha Moshe Sinai. Not explicit in the Torah, but God passed it down to Moses, he passed it down to us. It's a lot of law. Anyone's ever learned the laws of of tefillin? They're complex. Very, very complex. So a scribe has to be proficient in these laws, certainly before they write. Writing's a different issue. You got to know the laws. You got to know when mistakes are made, how to fix them, etc. But you have to be grounded in these laws. Thousands of laws. Complex. Very, very complex. It'd be very hard to say. Someone there sort of points out, that, writing a Torah scroll, myriad number of laws, thousands of laws. Now we could say, and the skeptics will, not believe it, right? But what could we say? If you look at a Torah scroll and you look at what goes in to producing a Torah scroll and all the myriad of laws, that go into it, how in the world can you say this man-made? I mean, you could say, wow, these people were really, really smart. These people were absolute geniuses. Okay. They're going to come up with all these laws. In the boxes have to be totally square. They can't be rounded. They have to be a certain size, a certain color. And how do you make the straps? And how do you wrap them? What goes inside? I mean, it's complex. That's why a person buys any religious object, i.e. tefillin. It's a good example. You want to buy from someone who's reputable. Somebody that, is respected in that field, is an expert in that field. Because this is something you don't want to play around with. Because if somebody does it unscrupulously, then every time the person puts it on, blessings in vain. And not only that, you don't fulfill your obligation. Wearing tefillin. Some people will be cheap. They'll be cheap and buy from someone maybe not so reputable. But again, you'll get what you don't pay for. And there are a lot of, unfortunately, there are unscrupulous people out there. That's why I have to go to someone, who's certified and obviously keeps Torah mitzvahs. Because, if they don't, when they're writing, let's say for mezuzahs, or for tefillin, and they write God's name. First of all, every day they have to go to the mikveh, they have to purify themselves, but they have to have intention when they write God's name. They have to have, it has to be Kabbalistic intention. The intention is it's for the sake of the one God in the world. That's the intention. Simple explanation. If their mind wandered when they wrote it, gotta scrap the whole thing. Or you cut off part of it, you put it together, whatever it is. Right? Whatever it is, you now messed up seriously. Or what happens if you have a letter that goes into another letter and you can't really tell what it is, right? So there are halachas governing this. Show it to little kids. Say, hey, what does it look like to you? You don't show it to an adult because they know what you're doing. Show it to a kid. What letter does this look like to you? If they say it's the right letter, very good. If they say it's the wrong letter, you're going to fix it. If there's a way to fix it. So these laws are complex. Very, very complex. So you don't get them right. You do it haphazardly or whatever, or take it from someone who, writes however they write it. There have been cases, forgery. Absolute forgeries where someone, maybe wrote the parsha but scribbled it like in script. Like a regular Israeli script, Hebrew script. Yeah, obviously not one kosher letter. It has to be written like it's Sefer Torah. Anyone who's ever seen letters in the Sefer Torah. So you're going to say, come on, why would somebody do that? First of all, it's easier. You can reproduce it quicker. No question. Make photocopies even, right? You can do it much quicker. You make more money. Because the person themselves, they don't know the difference. They totally don't know the difference. They can put anything in there. I remember once someone was putting up a mezuzah, a case of a mezuzah. I said, don't forget to put the parchment in. Because the parchment is more important than the box itself. They're like, ha. Like, you don't think I knew that? Just making sure. Because there'll be people that have put up a mezuzah, they don't put anything in it. That, you don't fulfill your obligation, go to anybody. Yeah, and again, does it have to be like really so expensive? They're not cheap. You can get cheaper ones, but they're not cheap. You know what they say, mitzvahs cost money. Mitzvahs cost geld. I remember I had to get a whole bunch of mezuzahs. Cost a lot. Because I had a lot. But I had to put them up in every place. There was a door. I had a lot of doors. You don't lose out by doing mitzvahs. So Kaufman's law is, if you're going to do it, you do it right. You don't mess around at all. Not with things like this. Does it mean it has to cost you tens of thousands of dollars? No. Doesn't mean that. But it's going to cost 100%. Yeah. So I got my youngest son just turned 12. So a friend of mine is very good scribe. A very sought after scribe. So whatever, call him soon. Order tefillin. I'll get a little bit of a discount, but whatever. Not going to be cheap. But what's the rationale is this kid's going to be using his whole life. Not just, I'm never going to use it. So I spend $1,000 or more. But get a cheaper ones. Because they're not going to use it. They'll use it a few times, put it in the closet, and that's it. Yeah, but if they're going to use it every day, or, any day you're obligated to put on tefillin, for a guy, so therefore what's going to get used? It's going to get used on a regular basis, so you don't want it to wear out. You want it to be top notch. You don't want to have blessings in vain. The whole point, you're wearing these things and your prayers are going straight up through that. Because you wrap tefillin on your arm. Right, you put them on your left arm or your right arm, depends what hand you write with. That's how we go. Right with your right hand, you wrap them on your left arm. If you write with your left hand, then you put on your right. Right. What if you're ambidextrous and you do things equally with your right and your left hand? Yeah, so you go like everybody else. Most people are right-handed. Right? So you put it on your left hand. Now, ambidextrous means you do everything just about equally with both hands. So in my case, I should have been left-handed. Well, my brothers are left-handed. I probably should have been left-handed. My left side is stronger than my right. But I learned how to write with my right hand. Yeah, but I do almost everything else with my left hand. Most things. What do you call it? I'll throw a ball with my left hand. I'll bat left-handed. Right, but my right hand, interesting. I cut. I will cut something with my right hand. Yeah, but my left hand is definitely stronger. But I don't do things both equally. So what do? You go after what you write. Right? That's halacha. Go after your right hand. Right? Sorry, you go after the hand you write. Right with. Right? That's halacha. So therefore, what? So even if you do everything else with your left hand, but you write with your right hand, then you put tefillin on your left hand. You wrap on your left hand. Yeah, on your left arm. Now, where does it wrap? So basically, you wrap it on your bicep, right? Bicep right here, and you wrap it around. And the tefillin should go outwards. Why outwards? Because it should go directly towards your heart. Now, the tefillin you wear on your head, where does it go? It goes right here, right in the middle, right? The baby soft spot. And it goes right in the middle. Why? That's where your brain is. So, like direct connection. Not only that, when you tie the tefillin, you have God's name, right? Tie with the shin, on your hands. So, there are a lot of different things going on over here. And the holiness of them. That's why non-Jews aren't allowed to wear them till after conversion, right? They should know how to put them on. That's for sure, right before conversion. I know some people, what they did, they bought the tefillin, they took out the parchment, and they practiced putting them on. Okay, that you're allowed to do. But there are certain things that have such intrinsic holiness, non-Jews can't do it if they're in the process of conversion. They have to do it right. They have to learn how to put them on right before. Should not be wearing them before conversion. Right? That's for sure. But there are a lot of halachas governing this. A person can't pass gas if they're wearing them. Yeah, every so often you have to touch them to make sure you don't forget you have them on. You shouldn't really speak mundane things when you have tefillin on. Yeah, these are super holy. And if they're not done right, there's not only are they not super holy, it's worse. First of all, it's not tefillin at all. One little thing, knock it out. An interesting thing. It's like any mitzvah person does. One little thing, you get it wrong. Right? You can totally get it wrong. And if you get it wrong, You're going to say, well, at least I got it. At least I did the mitzvah. No, you might not have done the mitzvah at all. Even after the fact. Oh, maybe we can rely on this, rely on that, rely on something else, maybe. But reality is, maybe not. Maybe the whole thing you did wrong. So imagine the person gets upstairs after 120 years. God says, hey, I see over here you never put on tefillin. What are you talking about? I've put on tefillin for years. I got these special tefillin, this and that. But yeah, at some point they became puzzled. They became blemished. You weren't allowed to wear them, right? That's the reason. Once every 7 years, you got to get them checked. Person perspires. Again, person could perspire. There could, after a while, it could be some of the letters go out, maybe. Over a certain amount of time, you got to get them checked. So it's an investment. It's like anything else. You buy something. You don't necessarily buy something so cheap. It depends on what it is. A person does a lot of drilling, in their house or other places. So you're not going to get a regular drill. You're going to get a super notch drill that's going to last. It's not going to burn out. Yeah, and you're going to get all these different types of drill bits and whatever. Okay, that's an investment. But it makes sense. Because if you're going to buy a cheap drill and you're going to use it a lot, you'll kill it. You absolutely destroy it. Yeah, so in spiritual terms, right, there's a mitzvah we say, you try and better the mitzvah, whatever it is. You make it the best you can be. You buy a lulav, you buy an esrog. You should buy something that's good quality. Doesn't mean you have to break the bank to do it. You're going to say, well, what if I get a kosher one? Is that good enough? I mean, it could be. Could be it's good enough. Is it mahudar? Is it considered, without really any blemishes? So that's a different issue, right? We want to beautify. Zekeli van Veu means you want to beautify the mitzvah. Beautifying the mitzvah when I light my candles in a menorah, should have a nice menorah. Again, do I have to have $1,000 menorah? No. You can buy it for half that, less than half that. Buy a silver menorah, $100, $150, get a nice menorah. Person has more, okay. Depends how much person wants to spend on the mitzvah. But that's what we do. Any mitzvah we do it to the best of our ability. We beautify the mitzvah. We don't mess around. Yeah. So when it comes to conversion, same thing. A person wants to, is going to go to a basin, right? Which is mostly my job, which basin send people to, different things. You want to go to a basin, knows what they're doing, top-notch basin, if possible. And that's how I went to an Orthodox basin, caused all kinds of problems. I never thought of. Person had to go through a stringent conversion here because one of the rabbis got thrown off the basin for different things that they did. So you only had really, 2 on the basin. So they wanted to go to stringent conversion. Okay. So I worked with them for a certain amount of time. And, the rabbinical court thought they're ready. So fine. They go to the mikvah. So there's a moil there. Check in a few people, make sure, circumcision was done all right. They just have to draw blood. Right. So the father-in-law goes in, no problem. His wife goes to mikvah, no problem. And the son-in-law's wife, kids go in, no problem. Check them. Son-in-law got a problem. What's the problem? They found something. That should have been taken off. Then the basin started yelling at me. And they said, how did you not know this? I said, if I would have known, I would have told you to check them first. I had no idea. Went to an Orthodox basin. Went to an Orthodox rabbinical court, caused all kinds of problems now. So I asked the moil there, the one who normally does circumcision. I said, is it really a doubt? He goes, no. He goes, this is for sure a problem. So they wanted to go to an expert. The expert was out of the country. A few weeks later, he had to come in and, and deal with the situation. But it caused a real serious problem. Why? Because this person, now again, it's a stringency to have this conversion done again. Okay. because there was an issue. I want to clarify the issue. Very good. But what's the problem now? Problem is his wife and kids are Jewish, and this guy, now he's got a major doubt. Yeah. So what do you do with the vessels? What do you do with his dishes and all that? Problem. He's not really Jewish. It's a problem. How can he stay with his wife? I mean, a lot of issues here. I mean, they had, what to rely on to get out of the problem. Okay. Yeah. But they started yelling at me. So I said, I had no reason to think there was a problem. Why would I have thought there's a problem? Person goes to a proper rabbinical court, they'll take care of it. Like, what should be the problem? Person was sent to a moil. I don't know what happened. Right? I don't know what happened over here. I didn't get involved in that. It wasn't my issue. I would have thought there would have been an issue. I told them if I would have thought there would have been an issue, I would have told you to check him straight away. Didn't seem to be any issue. Yeah. So the point is, what's my point? So my point is, if you're going to do it, you do it right. Does that mean, every rabbinical court's not fallible? No. People can make mistakes. 100% people make mistakes. This is a pretty serious mistake. But then 2 weeks later, 2-3 weeks later, this person has to have it done again. Has to have this piece removed, right? We'll keep this clean. And have something removed. So, whatever. Person was in pain for, I don't know, a couple of weeks. It should not have had to be done. How the first person missed something, I don't know. I don't have an answer. He missed it, whatever. Made a mistake. He made a mistake, right? Made a mistake. But this poor guy is in a ton of pain. Not to mention the fact that all kinds of problems, being with his wife and the dishes and all that. Yeah, serious issues. But that's not just like, oh, just a small thing or whatever. They got around the problems. I'm not saying not. You don't want issues. We're not, I mentioned this many times. We don't look for issues. I remember one of my daughters got married, and the head of yeshiva was filling out the ksuva, the marriage document, and he came to my name. I said, "Okay, what's your Hebrew name?" I said, "Well, some people might call me like this. Some people might call me like that." He just looked at me and he said, "Listen, I don't want to have any problems here. What's your name?" Like, what's your name? Just tell me your name. Like, no problem. Because things get messed up. I mean, you can fix it if you put the wrong name in, different things. Okay, you erase it, you write it in. It can be fixed. We don't look for issues, right? This is something I think a lot of people have difficulty understanding. Yeah, and I mentioned the last time, Pirkei Avos, I'll mention it again. If we don't have issues, I don't look for them. If there's an issue and there's a doubt somewhere along the line, I have to investigate. That in rabbinic literature is called the reyusa. Reyusa from the word ra means something evil, something bad, right? Something stinks to high heaven over here. There's a question. So if there's a question, I have to investigate, right? I have to investigate. If I don't have a question and there is no issue, why would I have to investigate? Right? We're not looking for problems, right? We are not looking for issues. If there's an issue, you got to deal with it. No question. 100%. You have to deal with it. But there are a lot of, I'll give an example. And this has happened. When a person gets married, you have two witnesses. They have to watch a few things. They have to watch the groom giving over the ring to the bride, right? And he has to make a certain statement, we'll say in a minute. And there's actually three things. They have to watch her get the ksuba, right? The marriage document, right? She takes possession of that. And when they're alone for the first time by themselves, they have to stand outside the door so no one gets in. Right, then make sure no one's in the room, right? They're by themselves, I don't know, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, depends how you hold. There's certain things they have to do, yeah, but they have to have fear of heaven. They have to be kosher Jews. They can't be related, right? They cannot be related to each other. So what can happen and what has happened in the past? I'm not saying it happens all the time, right? But it has happened. You have kids playing around. So a boy says, boy gives the girl something, and he says, you are sanctified to me, Kadas Moshe Yisrael. Like the law of Moses and the Jewish people. Yeah, that's how you get married, right? The groom, the chassan, the groom, is going to make that statement. He's going to say, "Arayat mikudeshesli," but the basu Kadas Moshe Yisrael, and then he's going to put the ring on her finger. And the witnesses have to witness that. They have to see him give over the ring. If they didn't see it, you got to do it again. Yeah, but they have to see it. So now what do I have? I have kids playing around, and one kid says to we'll make this easy. Boy says to a girl, with this ring, right? He does it with this ring, very good. What's the problem? Might be married. Does he have to give her a get? Does he have to give her a bill of divorce? This is the question. You're going to say, they're only playing around. Person made a statement, a valid statement. He gave her something. Doesn't have to be a ring. He gave her something. Could have been a Cracker Jacks box, ring, whatever. Doesn't have to be, it has to be worth something. It has to be worth like a dime or something, or even less than that. And he gives it to her in front of witnesses, in front of two people, in front of two kosher people. Now, if a person does such a thing, they can be married. They're going to say, okay, they're only playing around. Yeah, there's a problem. Here's a very significant halachic problem here. You just consecrated this woman. She can't marry anyone else unless you give her a bill of divorce. And yet people watch it. Yet people see it. That's how people get married. If anyone's ever seen anyone get married, an Orthodox wedding, that's how you get married. You don't even need a canopy. You do it anywhere. It doesn't really matter. Right? It doesn't really matter. So, person gives over this ring to witnesses. That's it. Mazel tov, they're married. This is the problem. This is the problem. So, person can mess around, and now they put themselves in a serious issue. Gave themselves a serious issue. So we got to be careful. You got to be careful what you say. You got to be careful what you do. Yeah, there can be unbelievable ramifications. Unbelievable ramifications. Of what, can be tragic things. Absolutely tragic things. The Torah itself, we always say it's not a pretzel. It's not to be played with. Because then you run into serious problems, right? Like we explained. Many other cases. Many other cases. A person could, let's say they had to deal with somebody. And in the middle of it, no, I was just kidding. Question is, does that have any believability? When it comes to witnesses and investigating witnesses, there are a lot of laws governing this. They can't be related in many ways. Otherwise, they have a bias. What if they're related through marriage? What if it's a second generation? What if it's a grandfather to a grandchild, or a great-grandfather or great-grandchild, or whatever? There are laws governing all this, governing marriage, governing divorce, not to mention, blessings, kashrus, all kinds of other things. Complex. There's a lot to know. Not only is there a lot to know, there are a lot of different issues, even within one issue. I remember once I had a question about something. I think I mentioned this before, but I had a question about something. And I didn't see anyone who asked the question. Normally, if you have a question, you have to come up with a question no one's ever asked. If you don't find any of the commentaries ask the question, it's probably not a question. It's probably a mistake on your part in general. So I had this question. And I'm looking around here, there, everywhere. I didn't see anyone ask the question. And then later, I actually found one of the later commentaries. Saga asked the question. Asked the exact same question. So I said, great. He asked the question. The only problem was I didn't realize how deep the question was. Because now when I saw this commentary and someone else, and another commentary, like go into like a whole bunch of different factors involved, I only thought of one thing. I only thought of one aspect of it. I wasn't thinking, so far and other things. What happened? There were like 6 different things. 6 different things going on at once. Okay, I hit one of them. I was happy. I hit one. It didn't, it didn't dawn on me. The other 5. Like I didn't realize what I was thinking at. Let's say like that. But then I saw someone ask the question. I was like, great. But it was much more detailed than I thought. I had another time. I had a question. I had a question. That's my Rebbe. I said, oh, take a look at this book. Probably written over there. Right? Something in the laws of Shabbos. I said, great. I looked over there, very thin book, very, very thin book on a specific topic. On about carrying from a private domain to a private domain to a public thoroughfare, or vice versa. So I had a certain question, and I saw so my Rebbe's right. Same question. I said, great. So this is great. I asked the same question. One of these, one of the great rabbis, previous generation. I felt so happy, and then he ripped the question to shreds. Totally demolished it. Said, what? You think that's a question? Come on. He brought like 20 different proofs against it. I was like, okay. But at least I asked the question. I saw the question in print. I was happy. Right? Little things make me happy. Yeah, but the Torah is very deep. Very deep. And I mentioned last night, I'll mention again, a lot of times people have good questions. They have very valid questions, but they're missing information. Sometimes the answer is not going to be a one-word answer. Sometimes, you got to explain other things for the person to understand it. So remember, someone's asked me a question, and I say, good question. Well, we hold like this and like this. Yeah, but what about, and they asked another question. So I had to backtrack. So I had to backtrack and explain certain things before I could actually answer the question. Why? It wasn't the person's fault. They're just lacking knowledge. Yeah. So I had to backtrack, explain certain things, and then get to the question. I said, now that's all background. So it took me 20 minutes to give the background. And after I give the background, I said, okay, let's deal with the question. The person said, like, I didn't know the question was so complex. I said, yeah, because you're missing information. If you had other information, it would have been that difficult of a question. But if you're missing that information, you don't know how the pieces fit in the puzzle. And if you don't know how the pieces fit in the puzzle, then guess what? You got to learn. And that's frustrating, right? Why is it frustrating? Very simple, because everyone wants everything now. Everyone wants, Rabbi Dr. Google to answer your question. I had someone ask me a question once. I said, oh, what's the matter? Google didn't have an answer. That's why you're coming to me. Yeah. There are questions more complex, less complex, but if you're missing information, it's frustrating. People get frustrated, I understand. But how are you going to get that information? You're going to learn. It takes a long time to learn. It's 2,700 pages of Talmud. There's a lot to learn. Lots of Midrashim, plus Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish law. All this, there's a lot to learn. People think, oh, all you do is study all day. Yeah, you want to try? You want to try going through all this material, try to keep everything in your head at once? Not so easy. But there's a frustration level, which I understand. Which I definitely do understand. That, a person will say, but why don't I, but how am I supposed to know that? You're not. You're missing information. That's the whole point. Right? You are missing information. So a person gets flustered. They get angry. How am I ever going to get this information? It takes time. It takes time. Some things are easier. Definitely easier to explain. Some things are harder. Some things are more complex. We get questions all the time and different things in, Jewish philosophy. Complex. It's not a one-word answer. It's not even, well, maybe. It can also depend on a lot of things. The Ramchal may say one thing, the Rambam may say something else. I mean, deep things obviously need clarification. But at times, sometimes we don't have. Like the end of days. End of days is a good example. People coming out of Christianity, one of their favorites, one of their favorites, one of their favorite topics. Yeah. But if you go through the prophets, what happens? They seem to contradict. Right? They're contradictions. So the Rambam brings down, person should not try and figure out when the Messiah is going to come, because you're going to make all these calculations, you make a mistake. And you're going to say, see, according to my calculations, Messiah didn't come, it's no Messiah, and that's it. Gotta leave Judaism. Doesn't mean a person wants to learn these things, they can. Gotta be careful. You have to be careful. The Torah itself is as vast as the ocean. That's how far it goes. It's just, you learn something, you see new things. We don't learn, one of the things I'm speaking about in Duties of the Heart is the fact you can't learn this, what you're learning now. Let's say you're learning Parshas Balak for everybody outside of Israel. This week for us, Parshas Pinchas. You can't look at the story of Bilam and Balak like you did when you were 5, when you were taught this story, or when you were 7, or when you were 10. There are deep, deep levels here, right? And it's a terrible thing to do that. Just like if somebody, like I heard Noah Weinberg, blessed memory, founder of Asia Torah, said, if you're a 10-year-old and you're doing the same things as a 5-year-old, that's bad. If you're a 15-year-old doing the same things as a 10-year-old, that's bad, right? Just add on the years, whatever it is. And if you're older doing the same stupid things you did when you were 20 years earlier, it's also bad. So the Chofetz Levavah says you cannot look at what we see today like we did 20 years ago, or like we saw when we were in our youth. We have a lot of life experience. We have a lot more knowledge. It's forbidden to do such a thing. Yeah. Why is it forbidden to do such a thing? Because now you're making the Torah look really small. Certainly in your eyes, because, like a secular cousin of my wife's would say, see, yeah, I already learned Tanakh when I was in school. Yeah, like a 5-year-old. You learned it with commentary? No, probably not. You learned it as a fairy tale. Right? So if you learn it as a fairy tale, how can you tell me what it is? I mean, there are deep things there. A lot of deep concepts. That's why people say, it's complex. And there are certain places in Tanakh that seem to contradict what the Torah says. So, you have to be holding somewhere in the world, to be able to decipher, what it means. There are a lot of things going on in the background that people don't see, that people don't fathom. There are a lot of things. Give a few examples. Got the story of Amalek, right, in Samuel 1, chapter 15. I think it's chapter 15. Yeah, so King Saul's given a command by Shmuel Navi, by Samuel the prophet, and he says, wipe out all of Amalek, men, women, children, animals, wipe them all out. And so King Saul, at some level, thinks he did the right thing. He left the best of the flock, to sacrifice, and he left the king alive. Yeah, and that king shacked up with someone, and eventually who came out as Haman. Comes along saying with the prophet, he's like, what's going on over here? What are those animals I hear? It didn't even dawn on him he did anything wrong. He had his own calculation why he did it. Even for the sake of heaven. He had his own calculation. So if he had his own calculation, how did he make a mistake until Samuel the prophet came to him? It's hard to understand. Right? There are many things in Tanakh like that. You see the story, what's the obvious case someone's going to bring up? What about the story of King David about Sheba? Yeah. Looks pretty bad. Right? Psalm 51. Nathan the Navi, Nathan the prophet chastises him. But the Gemara says anyone who said King David sinned is making a mistake. Well, people say it's pretty obvious what he did. He sent Uri to the front lines, basically to be killed. He took his wife. Looks pretty bad. Definitely looks pretty bad. But if you don't know the background, you don't know what's going on, yeah, then okay. And even if you do know the background, still, she wasn't a married woman. Everyone who went to war wrote his wife a bill of divorce. He didn't come back. She wasn't married. Not only that, he deserved death penalty. He was moed b'malchus. He was what's the word? Rebellious against the king. So he deserved death penalty. No question, he deserves the death penalty. Now, even with that information, he deserved death penalty. She wasn't a married woman. But not only that, they have a child. Who's that child? King Solomon takes over for King David, and with all the other children he had. So you see, this is supposed to be, but some people would say it was a little bit dodgy. Or cheeky. Maybe dodgy is a better word. Yeah. Doesn't look so good. Talking King David, look what he wrote. Book of Psalms, look how righteous he was. Yeah. But at the end of the day, is she a married woman? Nope. She's not a married woman. Did he do anything wrong by sending her husband to the front lines? No. He was more of a malchus. He's liable for death penalty anyway, rebellious against the king. So what did he do wrong? He does get chastised some level. But the reality is he guilty? Not guilty. The Gemara says anyone who says he sinned they're making a mistake. They're making a mistake. Now, someone could say, but at his level and his stature, should he have done such a thing? That's a different issue. But did he really sin? No. He didn't do anything wrong. But everyone will bring up that case because no one knows the background. Nobody knows the background. So there are a lot of things. I mean, the list goes on. There are a lot of things. If you don't know what's going on, you don't go more in depth, you miss the whole point. And the obvious examples are mistranslations, like the Christians. Total mistranslation. In most things, we always say you have to understand in context. Because if you don't see it in context, you won't understand it. You'll just say it's like this, it's like that, it's like the other thing. Right? But you make a serious mistake. That's what people do. That's why I have a lot of mistranslations. Very true. Right? You can't take things out of context. They have to be understood. Right? Give one example. Another example. If Jeremiah chapter 30, what does Jeremiah chapter 30 speak about? It speaks about the new covenant, quote unquote. What we call the Brit Chadashah, the new covenant. Now, if you read that entire chapter, no such thing as a new covenant. Why is there no such thing as a new covenant? No such thing. Why? Because you can't go against the old covenant. Can't change the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu said you can't add or subtract. You can't add or subtract. What's going on? Talking about pure logic. Yeah. So the beginning of the chapter says, Jeremiah is screaming at everyone, says you have to go back to the original covenant, i.e., the Torah that Moses gave. Got to go back to that. So we're going to make a new covenant. Now, how can it be new? How in the world can it be new? In other words, if you're telling me it's new, that means the old is bad. Well, that can't be. Because Moses himself, in the name of God, said you can't add or subtract. So how can you have anything new? Oh, they'll tell you they're not chosen. JC came and absolved their sins. All this garbage. Okay. They can make whatever claim they want. But it goes against logic in the Torah. There's logic in the Torah. You have to understand what it is. But there is logic. You can't go against that. Yeah, so it has to be learned, but it has to be learned properly. And if you don't learn it properly, you misinterpret it. I know someone many years ago. No, I'm not sure where this person is today. But this person told me many, many years ago. There's Jews about Tshuva, right? Returning to Judaism. And he says, I'm learning Tanakh without commentary. Now, it could be just wants to run through it, just see what the stories are, this and that, and then eventually go in depth. But as I said, how can you learn without commentary? How is it possible to learn without commentary? It's impossible. It won't make heads or tails out of it. There's a lot of things that are hard to understand, very hard to understand. People think the Torah is hard to understand. Yeah, it's extremely hard to understand. So I want to point out, right? You got to repeat what you learned, right? But remember one thing: the more you learn, the more depth you see. Right? In other words, you might learn something that has nothing to do with something else, or may not think it has anything to do with something else, and all of a sudden it sheds light on something you had difficulty with. Sort of like I'll say it's like out of the blue, but it's not, because the entire Torah is connected. They say, "Oh, I had this question a long time ago, never really found an answer." All of a sudden, boom, they're learning something else, and here it is, discussed. Because they say, even if you're rich in one place, i.e., you have knowledge, in a certain area, and you have less knowledge in another area, yeah, the more you learn, so that's what's going to happen. You gain more knowledge. You ask different types of questions. The question will not be, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? Right? Eventually, you get past that, and the questions become okay. I saw Rashi says like this. The Ramban disagrees. What are they arguing about? Why does Rashi not learn like the Ramban? That's another level. That's a totally different level, of learning, right? Trying to decipher what's going on and if there are ramifications. And a lot of times there may be ramifications. Yeah, when it comes to Jewish law, right, we'll make this easy. Yeah, you learn up something very well, and there could be disagreement just on certain words that are used. Let's say one rabbinic authority used, a certain word, another rabbinic authority didn't. Okay, why didn't he say the same thing? Are there ramifications if they didn't say the same exact thing? Do they mean the exact same thing? Can I deduce they mean the same thing? That you have to see. That could have tremendous ramifications. Whether something is permitted or something is forbidden. Yeah, huge ramifications. So, when it comes to Jewish scholarship, it takes a long time. It takes a long time. You do have people, even from young ages, they've gone through a lot of material, absolute geniuses, this and that. Okay, it's rare. And you can have people of normal, let's say average intelligence, but they grind and grind and grind and grind, so to speak. And, they become great rabbinic authorities. I say by Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, Shamir Kam Damot, God should avenge his blood, famous student of the Chofetz Chaim and of the head of the Baranovich Yeshiva. He claimed on himself he had average intelligence. Okay. Now, so someone asked him if that's true, right? If that's true, then how is it possible you became so great? Right? How is that possible? He said he reviewed a lot and he was constantly learning. He was always constantly learning. So by constantly learning, he gained more knowledge. But it wasn't because he had above average intelligence. Right? That wasn't the case. Someone asks, our learning Torah generally meant we study much as possible, at least we should commit it to memory. Yeah, there are a lot of things probably we should commit to memory. I would agree. It means we study less, but go over and over until we've learned it. So yeah, so I would say like this. People don't like to review. People like to learn new things. Review is absolutely crucial. So the question is, how much should a person review? How much should they review, at the expense of learning more? That's a good question. Is it better to learn less but commit it to memory? Or is it better just try and, review as much as possible, but also covering ground? So I would say, again, just my opinion, I would say that you got to do both. And doing both is going to be hard. Right? Doing both is definitely going to be hard. But if you don't review, you won't remember. And if you only learn a little bit, even if you review it a lot, you won't know anything. Right? There are two ways to learn. One way is what we call be'iyun, in depth. Another way is called bekias, what we call learning quicker. So in many yeshivas, what do? So in the morning, they cover a small amount of ground, but they cover it very much in depth. They cover it, soup to nuts, let's say. Then in the afternoon, they'll learn other chapters, and they'll go much quicker. Now, going much quicker doesn't mean I read it without understanding. Going much quicker means I want to cover ground. I have to review it, but I also want to finish what I'm learning. I want to finish the tractate. That's also pretty crucial. So you need both. So Rav Chaim Brisker, bless him, everyone said, famous Rav Chaim Brisker, born 150, 200 years ago, said that if you only learn be'iyun, if you only learn in depth, you won't know anything. And if you only learn bekias, if you only learn quicker, let's say, you'll never understand anything. So you need both. You definitely need both. There's no question. You need the depth, but you need the breadth. You need the breadth also. It's very rare where you find somebody that lives in both worlds, meaning they could be halachic decisors, of Jewish law, but they could also have a tremendous command on the entire Talmud itself, even if it's not, has nothing to do with Jewish law, right? It's something we don't practice today because we don't have a temple or whatever it is. It's very rare you see both in one person. Either you'll see someone's got a tremendous breadth of Torah all over. Yeah, but when it comes to halachic decisions, they won't answer because they're living, they're looking at things in a different way. Or you have people that know certain things very, very well, very, very well, but they don't have the breadth. They don't have the breadth of knowledge. So essentially, what do you have? Essentially, what you have is either you're going to have people that know certain things very, very well, but they won't know other things well. And you have other people that will know, that will have a lot of, breadth of knowledge, wide knowledge, but they won't be able to render a halachic decision. It's very rare you get both. Very, very rare. I mean, I've seen a few people that have both, but it's rare. Either you're in one realm or the other. So I sort of took a hybrid over here and came up with my own idea. Again, it's my own idea. You can take it, however a person wants. When a person knows how to learn at a certain level, right, then I would say, instead of learning, let's say, in depth, a little bit, and the rest you learn much quicker, I would say make a hybrid. Learn everything in depth, but just go a little bit quicker. Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean? It means that if a person really knows how to learn, so it's not going to take you that long to understand, what the commentaries are going to say, what the Gemara says, and this and that. But you want to learn in depth to the extent where you cover ground, but you have it in your hand also. You have it in your pocket also. Exactly what we do according to Allah. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be a rabbinic decider of Jewish law. But at the end of the day, whatever you learn, you should learn to the end. So what my Rebbe would hold. You learn it until you get to the halakha. Yeah. But the thing is, you don't want to spend days and weeks on one thing. Otherwise, you won't accomplish anything. Sometimes you're going to have questions that don't have answers. Yeah, you might not find, or you might not find a good answer. Question is, if you don't find a good answer, then does that affect what Jewish law says or not? Okay, that's the whole question, right? Depends on what you're learning. But I would say, and this has been what I've been doing for years, is learning a little bit quicker, but going more in depth. In other words, instead of going really slow at one point and faster at another point, right? I do the same for everything. I mean, I'm not learning full time, so I don't have that flexibility, so to speak, right? So again, not everyone would necessarily agree. They say, people would say you should focus more on this or focus more on that, go a little bit slower. Okay. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you have to see what works for a person. The problem is, if you go like a turtle, you'll never know anything. You won't, you can't go too fast without understanding. That's nothing. Person can't just read up the Gemara and this and that, or read up anything they're learning and think, okay, I got it. You got to think about what's being said. If you're learning oral law, you don't understand it, you don't get any mitzvah at all. There's no mitzvah at all. You're just reading the word. Yeah, if you're reading Torah Shabbat, if you're reading written law, i.e. the Bible, Tanakh, even if you don't understand it, you get merit. Right? You should get merit. Oral law is not like that. So it depends. It depends. I would say, you're right. It's better to chazer, to review. Even if you review a lot, but it shouldn't be the expense of your other learning. You got to find time to do that. True. Right? But you got to cover ground. Right? Again, you have to do both. You can't have one without the other. You can say, I only have time for one. Yeah, I don't think it's better just to review. I would say review for a short amount of time. When you have more time, review. I'm not saying don't review. You have to review. No question. You definitely have to review. Yeah, but at the same time, what would I say? You got to cover ground. And I had certain things I'd be very disciplined. I wanted to cover a certain amount of ground, but sometimes, I got caught up, in, let's say, Jewish law and looking things up and whatever, that sometimes I would miss my quota, what I wanted to do for the week. Okay? Right? But, you have to, if you learn in a certain way, you got to be very, very disciplined. Very, very disciplined. There are certain things I could sit on for a long time, but, it's kind of like Scotty in Star Trek. Captain, I don't have enough time. I need more time. Okay? I have certain things I learn in the morning, and I'm pretty rigid. Up until this point, I learned one thing. To this point, I learned something else. Sometimes things overlap. Sometimes I just want to finish something or whatever. So, okay, either I try and make it up, or if I miss it, whatever, try and make it up another day. If you only have a certain amount of time, you got to use the time, the best way possible. So in this sense, you're right. I would say it's very good to review, but it's not good to review at the expense of learning more. I'm not saying don't review, right? You want to review and get things down like the back of your hand. That's very true. That is very true. But not at the expense of not covering ground. You also have to cover ground, right? So you have to have a happy medium. Then you're going to say, I want to review, 45 minutes to an hour a day. Okay. But you have to find another hour in the day, at least, to go further and then go back and review. And you got to make time to do that. If you don't review, it's not worth anything, right? It's not worth very much at all. Why? Because you're not going to remember. So what's the point of learning if you're not going to remember? Right? You got to be disciplined in that way also. So, so my simple answer is review less, cover ground. Now, if you review to the point you don't remember, okay, you got to go back. You end up covering less ground. But the person keep, once you have a certain level of knowledge, in that thing, you keep going over and over it, very good. Right? So then you go over it less. You can still keep going over it, but not at the expense of covering ground. You also need to cover ground. But I would say like this at the beginning when someone's learning how to learn, this is for all guys out there going to learn Gemara. Yeah, you got to take it really slow. You got to take it really slow. You have to understand the concepts, you have to understand the words, the phrases, etc. When when asking a question, giving an answer, and how it works, you have to understand the structure. Once you understand the structure, that's going to take time. And words come up all the time, right? That are similar. So eventually you get the vocabulary down, you get the words down. Now it's understanding concepts. Now it's understanding how the commentaries deal with it. And that you got to sit. That you got to sit for a good while. I would say a good couple years. A good couple years, day in and day out. Because otherwise, you're not going to get it. Otherwise, it's, once you start analyzing different commentaries, much harder. Much, much harder. Because sometimes they may agree, but they may use different language. The question is, do they agree? They don't agree. You have to learn how to analyze. Right? That doesn't, that is work, 100%. Right? Is work. Someone asked, how deep should we study every chapter in Chumash? Oh, good question. Good question. Chumash is very deep. It's the base of everything that we do. So you have these parshas, these last number of parshas. We just use them as an example. You have Parsha Shlach, right? Sin of the spies. You have Parshas Korach. You got the whole story with Korach. You got Parshas Chukah. It's all about the red heifer. You got Bilam, Balak, Parshas Balak. You got Parshas Pinchas. That we're going to read this week. All about Pinchas. There are deep fundamental things going on. I would say like this. The obligation, certainly for a guy, is to read the Torah in Hebrew twice during the week. Read the Aramaic translation. If you don't understand the Aramaic translation, you read Rashi. A lot of good translations on Rashi, right? So it's brought down. You want to have fear of heaven. See what Rashi does with these verses. See how Rashi learns. There's depth there. I'm saying just with Rashi, and seeing what's going on. But yeah, you could spend, a long time. You can spend a long time just on that. Just going through Chumash and nothing else. Unfortunately, I don't think people learn it in depth today like it should be. Brisker Rov once said, Rav Yisrael Zev Soloveitchik, blessed memory, son of Rav Chaim Brisker, we just mentioned, once said that a person does Shnei Mikra Vechad Targum, he reads the Torah twice, he reads the Aramaic translation every week. He says that if you do that you'll get long life. You have long life. So the Brisker Rav said, I don't understand. He said, I see people go through the parsha, they just run through the words, go through the Aramaic translation, that's it. He said, that's not what the mitzvah is. The mitzvah is delve into it. Okay, got to find time for that also. Then we have to find time for that also. But how in depth should you go? Obviously, the more in depth, the better. You have a lot more understanding, or maybe a lot more confusion. Right? There's unbelievable depth. Unbelievable depth. Look, you look at this, Genesis is a very good example. You look at a lot of stories there, incomprehensible. Incomprehensible in a lot of ways. Many, many ways. Yeah, you gotta try to understand. Like, my Rebbe's got a commentary on Chumash called Chochmah V'das. Only did on Genesis in the Book of Exodus. But he asked a lot of questions in the back, according to Jewish law. In other words, learning certain things within the parsha according to Jewish law. Give an example. There's a whole question. Jacob's married two sisters. If he kept the Torah before it was given, whatever that means, how could he be married two sisters? And it's like a whole thing. If he kept the Torah. Right? He wasn't a Noahide. Or you got a case even with Yaakov marries Rachel, and what happens? He got tricked and he married Leah. So now in the Gemara Kedushin says when you marry someone, you have to have intention for the one you marry. He had intention to marry who? Rachel. Who did he end up marrying? Leah. How could he be married to her? So we call him Mekach To. It's a mistake. He can divorce her 100%. He's not the one. She's not the one. He didn't have intention for her. He says, you're consecrated to me. He thinks it's Rachel. Really, it's Leah. Problem. How is that kedusha? How is that sanctification? How does that work? It should never work. Yeah. So, Korach, for instance, it says in the Parsha, after Korach gets walled up, it says, do not be like Korach in his group. Right? Don't cause machlokas. Don't cause, problems over here. So commentaries ask, is that a mitzvah in the Torah? Is that poskin anywhere in the Torah? That we hold such a thing. That there's a mitzvah not to argue with others or start up with others, in general. Right? That's the whole question. Where does that come in? There's a lot of depth over here. There's a lot of depth in, not just that, in, story of Book of Exodus, what happened in Egypt, in the Mishkan and how it's built. I mean, there are a lot of things you can learn. You can spend a long time. You spend all day learning Chumash. You could. Certainly for guys, that's going to be a problem, right? Because they gotta learn Talmud over here. But could a person learn it in depth every week? You're gonna find time to do it for sure. That's no question. I would say Tanakh also. Someone who's, the Gemara says you want to be called a rabbinic scholar, you have to know all 24 books. You have to know all 24 books like the back of your hand. Yeah. How many people today can say they know Tanakh like the back of their hand? Right? So usually during the winter every Saturday night, I've been learning Tanakh. Started from the book of Joshua, holding by beginning of Isaiah, chapter 6, chapter 7, something like that. And when it gets later, like now, so usually during after Tisha B'Av, so I don't have my normal schedule, so I'll spend part of my morning, making up for that, and try every day to learn for an hour, Tanakh. But slowly but surely, I've been doing this for years, working my way through. So, it's it's very rewarding, right, in many ways. But here the question is, okay, that's for men. Yeah. The question is now, what about women? Women know how to learn Torah. Yeah, they learn the commentaries on Torah. That's, in schools, that's what kids learn. They come out of high school. They're busy dissecting Ramban and Or Chaims and Kliyakars, and that's what they're doing. Because that's they're allowed to learn, right? So they keep them off the streets. They keep them busy, learning, learning Chumash, learning Tanakh, learning laws. Obviously, that apply to them in in prayer and blessings and other things, as well. Give them more of a well-rounded education and Torah, Tanakh, and laws and all that. But as a person gets older, eventually, hopefully they're gonna get married and whatnot. We're not gonna have time for this. They're not gonna learn it in depth. They're not gonna, they don't have as much time to learn. Should a woman learn in general? Sure, find time to listen to a class, go to a shir, go to a class or whatever. But sitting down dissecting like she did when she was younger, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's just, it's just going to be very, very hard, right? She's busy raising a family. She's going to be sleep deprived, right? Kids up in the middle of the night, other things to deal with. She's not going to have time. Definitely not going to have time. Now, does that mean she shouldn't learn at all? No, I wouldn't say that. I think it's important for women to learn also, but they're going to be more limited in time. That's why they're exempt. That's why 100%. 100% they're exempt. at the same time. If a woman does have time now, sure, why not? Should they learn Chumash in depth and Tanakh? Sure. Whatever they can learn, right? The time is now. Mir Hashem, a woman gets married, you're not going to have time. You're definitely not going to have time. All things being equal, but it doesn't mean a woman should learn at all. That's what I would say on that. Somebody asked a question I've heard before also. What do you do or say to a friend who says God speaks to him? Right? So I would say, tongue in cheek, they need psychiatric help. Now, you can't really say that because they'll probably get offended. Right? But usually, if we're saying God's speaking to you, we hold that there are no prophets today. The prophets today are little children or imbeciles. There's no prophecy. Now, prophecy is a very specific thing. So I can't say what a person feels and they say, God is speaking to me. Yeah. I can tell you, though, at least from what I know, when it comes to prophecy in general, a prophet, even not as great as Moshe Rabbeinu, knew they were having prophecy. Yeah, but when were they having prophecy? They didn't have any, they were like in a trance. They were asleep. Yeah. But they were aware that it was a prophecy. Moshe Rabbeinu was the only one that spoke to God face to face. He had all his faculties. All his faculties. So you could say, well, how does God speak to you? Then you see if the person's really a wacko or not. How is God speaking to you? If a person says, listen, I prayed really hard, God answered my prayer. Okay. Doesn't mean God's speaking to you. What that means is that you prayed for something and God answered it. Okay. Happens to a lot of people. Sometimes the answer is no, but let's say, there were times something happened, and God said, okay. God can answer our prayers in the positive. That's true. He can also answer in the negative, but can answer in the positive. Okay. Does that mean he's speaking to me? Does that mean he's in my head telling me this, that, and the other thing? It could be anything. Could be a person ate something spicy. I don't know. They think that's what it is. For God to speak to a person, you have to understand that person knows 100% they're speaking to God. Sorry, let's say better, that God is speaking to them, right? In other words, any prophet that had prophecy, which we don't have prophecy today, the lowest form of prophecy is divine inspiration, which very few people have today. Talking about great rabbinic authorities have it, right? But most people don't have it. But when it comes to prophecy in general, every prophet knew God was speaking to them. It doesn't matter if they were awake, they were in a trance, they were asleep. They knew based on the dream or the angel that came and gave information or whatever it was, they knew 100% prophecy, 100%, no doubts. We would have 1 million doubts today. It would be OCD. We'd have 1.5 million doubts, right? That could be just your own innermost thoughts and you think it's coming from a higher source. In other words, there are things a person can think and want to happen, let's say. And in the end, we may will it to the extent where, yeah, I heard this voice or I had this impression or whatever, and that's what, is that real? It's not prophecy. Prophecy is something very specific. It cannot be prophecy. Now, what are they hearing? I can't answer. I've heard this a number of times. I've heard this a number of times. Now, if a person would say, I prayed and God answered my prayers, okay, that can happen. That happened with non-Jews also. Now, they may attribute it to JC and other things, but okay, it could happen. I'm not going to say it can't happen. What? Someone prays, and they get what they want. What? It does, God can give a person what they want, and it could be bad for them. He can give it to them. Let's say they're totally bad, so God gives it to them in this world, so they'll have nothing in the next world. Okay. But answering a person's prayer does not mean God's speaking to you. Right? That is a big misnomer. Big, big misnomer. I've heard this a lot. And usually it comes from former Christians or Christians in general. Yeah, God ain't speaking to anybody. Not in this generation. I mean, again, unless they're of unbelievable stature, spiritual stature. They're not by non-Jews by any stretch. Because they're all in idolatry. Right? Most of them are idolatry. Yeah. Certainly, I would say probably not working on character traits, probably bad people in general. I'm not going to say everybody, but, probably a good amount of them because they don't have a real anchor. They don't have a real Torah to hang their coat on, so to speak, or hang their hat on, let's say. So they're doing whatever their heart tells them or whatever their mind tells them. That's not righteousness. I mean, the Ramchal says in Path of the Just, there were people going to show they're so righteous, they're so pious. What do? They run around in the snow when it's freezing cold in a tank top and shorts. They afflict the body. Yeah, the Ramchal says, no, that's a fool. Right? We're not into aesthetics over here. That's not what we're into. We live in this world. I don't know if you'd be able to convince them. You could ask them, like, what does that mean? What does that mean exactly? God is speaking through you. How do you know it's him? How do you know it's direct communication? And again, there's no prophecy to them. So whatever they're saying, it's definitely not true. You can ask them. I mean, they might get a little bit edgy. You're doubting them. But ask them what the experience is like. I asked somebody once. I had a student that I don't know, they're a former pastor. I don't remember exactly, but they once told me they spoke in tongue. So I said, great. I said, I asked them one day. I said, tell me what that experience was like. It's like, I'd love to hear what that experience is like. And they said, Rabbi, that was a different world. I'm not going there. I said, I won't tell anybody. I said, if you don't want me to tell anyone, I won't tell anyone. I said, I'm just curious, like, what is that experience like? I didn't get any information. So, are these people wackos? Yeah. I would say they're wackos. They're speaking this language. They think they're possessed. I don't, could it be sorcery? Oh, could be. I'll throw that out there. Why not? Could be sorcery. And they're saying things that sound like gibberish and you can't understand. Right? It definitely could be sorcery. Okay, but sorcery. Something really, they're possessed. And the spirits coming and saying, okay, we don't believe in that. We don't believe in that at all. There is such a thing. I spoke last week about a dibuk. That's a different thing. I don't think any of these people are speaking in tongues or whatever, it's a dibuk. That's not the case. That's definitely not the case. Because dibuk's not even that common. I mean, a handful of cases throughout history, a handful, at best, at least that we know about. So not very common at all. So I would say, I told somebody, I told a few people this, if you really believe this, and that God's speaking to you, you walk into a rabbinical court, I go, take my advice. Do not open your mouth about that. They will think you're an absolute wacko. I go, that's what, they're not going to tell you that, but that's what they think. I guarantee that's what they think. Yeah. They're going to say, we don't need someone like this in Jewish people. Right? So I told people that. I said, if you really think that, you really believe 100%, never mention that in a rabbinical court. They will never convert you. Now, you want to tell me, and I think this is true. I think this is very true. You want to tell me that you prayed and you got your questions answered. Okay. That I could hear. Right? That I could hear. But, but to actually say that, that God spoke to me, and I heard what he said, yeah, that's a very different issue. That's a very different issue. Someone here mentions fairly common Christian community to tell times that God's speaking to them. Okay. But again, if a person gets their prayers answered, I don't have an issue with that. Non-Jew can get their prayers answered. It's not a question. Right? It's definitely not a question. But to say they know God's speaking to them, okay, it's a different issue. Somebody asks, for the writing of the Mishnah, did the Jews keep notebooks with annotation? Everything on their heads. Yeah, like this. Oral law was meant to be kept orally. Now, what you had was chains, many, many chains, and many groups of people that were memorizing different things. Right? They were memorizing different things. So therefore, they kept memorizing. You had all these different chains, hundreds and thousands of chains, memorizing different things. Yeah, it wasn't written down. They only allowed the oral law to be written down, after the destruction of the temple. It was really only supposed to be given over orally. But what happened? Because they were dispersed and thrown out and all that. So what happened? They had to write it down. They had no choice, and they were right, because if they didn't write it down, what would have happened? Torah would have been forgotten. 100%. Right? So the Jews keep notebooks. They didn't have notebooks. How'd they have notebooks? Yeah. What it would have meant to write these things down? They'd chisel things out of rocks. Imagine carrying all these rocks as notebooks. Forget it. They memorized it. You had thousands of people, thousands of chains memorizing different things. Memorizing, prayer, memorizing, sacrifices, purity and impurity, all these different things. They get a lot of chains memorizing. Things couldn't be written down. If they wanted to, there would have been no possible way to carry it. No one had tablets back then. Certainly not, like a digital thing. They couldn't write it down. They had to chisel it out of rock. Eventually, they had paper, okay, but, it was really supposed to be transmitted orally. So then they brought everyone together, or what they heard that this rabbi said, that rabbi said, eventually they wrote what they wrote down. They wrote down what they said, and then Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, the exile, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, he organized the Mishnah. Ravami, Ravashi, they organized all these statements, all these statements and put them in the Gemara, which the Mishnah and the Gemara make up the Talmud. Right? So in other words, they organize things. You had the laws of the Paschal offering, they put it in one place. The laws of Shabbos, they put it in one place. Again, things overlapped. Sometimes you can have discussions of, the laws of Shabbos in other places. Yeah, but they organized it in a certain way. Right? So basically everything, right, that is correct, everything was in their heads, until they're able to write it down, but they had to memorize it. So then the question is, okay, if it's a canonized compilation of halacha, and other people kept written records, again, would have been impossible. Would have, later on, maybe. Yeah. Once paper came along or whatever, papyrus and other things. But certainly by the destruction, they didn't have that. So it had to be done orally. It had to be memorized orally. That's how it was done. Until after destruction, they felt they had to write it down. Now, how'd they write it down? I guess they found paper or papyrus or whatever, and, wrote things down, and then they had to verify it, right? The whole verification process. In other words, I heard on this Mishnah, Reb Meir said this. Someone says, "Oh, but I heard Rabbi Yehuda said like this." So what are they arguing about? This, what's the whole discussion? Then they go through this discussion, and the Gemara asks, how could he said that? He said something somewhere else, or we have a contradiction in verses, and right. That's how it was done. But it was only written down later. It's only written down, and then it was organized, right? So there was a lot of confusion also, because until it was canonized, there's a whole bunch of statements, thousands and thousands of statements. So where do you put them? How do you organize it? I mean, the whole thing, right? The whole thing, how it was, exactly how it was done. But the reality is, it would have been remembered much better had it been done orally. Problem was, they couldn't rely on doing it orally. A lot of people, got destroyed. Temple got destroyed. People got exiled. They were thrown out of the land. So people weren't in contact with other people, at some level. And things had to be verified, right? So there's a lot of things. There are a lot of things. There are definitely a lot of things, going on with that. But yeah, if you memorize something and you have to give it over to someone else, that it's better than writing it down in many ways. Why? Because if I have to know it and I have to explain it to someone else, that means you have to know it very well. Yeah, writing it down, okay, doesn't necessarily mean you have to know it so well. You just have to know how to write it down, right? But when you have to give it over to someone else and you have to explain it to someone else, right? That's why you can have the greatest rabbinical scholars, but if they can't explain it, if they explain things way over people's heads, that doesn't do anything, right? You got to explain things according to the way people can understand, not just to show off your intelligence and show how much you know, right? But not everyone has that ability to give over information in a clear way. But if you had to memorize it and you had to give it over to someone else, that's what you had to do. You had to know it. You had to know it clear. And something like that is so special to you, you have to give it over to someone else. Yeah, that's how it's going to be preserved. Someone has okay to listen to classical music. So I'm not a fan of classical music, only because I think it's like every time I think of classical music, I think of being drilled by a dentist. I'll call it dental music and call it classical music. Yeah, can you listen to it? Yeah, you're allowed to listen to it. You're allowed to listen to it. Now, what's the obvious question someone's going to ask, and they ask the question, what if it's composed by an anti-Semite? Yeah, it's a problem, right? If you, again, it's a personal preference. I would say, again, my opinion for what it's worth, if an anti-Semite wrote it, composed, it can be, it can be as beautiful as it is. It can draw a person to tears. But that person hates and despises Jews, so how could you listen to it? So a person can say, so what's the answer? What's the simple answer? You could tell me, I don't really care what this person thinks. I don't care what he thinks, this person thinks about Jews, for that matter. I could care less. I only care what they say. I only care, how they compose, and what they composed and what their music is. Now, a person can say that. You can say that also, by professional sports. So there are professional athletes that are scum of the earth. Obviously not all of them. Some of them are scum of the earth. So the person will say, I don't care what they do in the off season. I don't care what they do in their private life. Doesn't matter. I want to see them hit a ball. I want to see them throw a ball. I want to see them shoot a ball, let's say. Okay. Right? But how does, so a person's going to answer, same thing. I don't care what they're political, what they say politically. Yeah. Do I care some basketball players think the world is flat? No. Think they're an idiot. Yeah. I'm going to take what they say serious about politics? No. About anything? No. What do they know? They don't know anything about nothing. Tell me someone's a Rhodes Scholar, they have real education, okay. Have a discussion, maybe. Or you take, you get professional athletes, you take entertainers. You talk about people in the movies, they have opinions. They got very strong opinions, about things they don't know anything about. With controversy recently, and comes up every so often with Roger Waters. Big anti-Semite. Now he claims he's not an anti-Semite. He just claims he's pro-Palestinian. So if you're pro-Palestinian, doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. Of course, you're gonna hate Jews. It makes sense. I mean, there are secular Jews that are pro-Palestinian. Yeah, they don't like Judaism that much. They don't know anything about the state of Israel and all that, but okay. Yeah, so now he had a concert canceled, I think in Germany, and it's losing money because of his politics. Because of his politics. Okay, it's his fault. Now, someone comes out and says things like he says, you want to listen to him? I don't care how good he plays. How could you listen to it? I don't even care if he's not making money from you. Yeah, how could a person listen to this garbage? Person's a piece of garbage. How can you listen to him? Again, it depends what it is. Depends how bad it is. Now, most people would say, I don't care what this person does in their private life. But they're not anti-Semites. But they're scum of the earth in other ways. Womanizers, woman beaters, drug addicts, who knows what, whatever they do. Again, not all of them. Whoever's doing things that are bad, So what do I care? I want to see them shoot a ball. Isn't that a contradiction in terms? They go against all your values. How can you watch them, shoot a ball? What's the answer? Because you don't care. You don't care what they do in their private lives. Problem is, you're going to say, but this person's a real anti-Semite. Roger Waters is a real anti-Semite. Yeah, he spits on he spits on Jews all the time. That's what he does. So how can you listen to him? How can you listen to his music? How can someone listen to Whoopi Goldberg? Same thing. I'll put her up there. Holocaust denier. Saying that Judaism's not a race, and it wasn't a systematic killing of a race. Like, come on, you got to be out of your mind. Say such a thing. I mean, I think she is. It's a question. Came out a bunch of times against her. For saying what she said, and she didn't back down. Didn't apologize because they blew up her Twitter feed, and she got banned for a couple weeks or a month from her show. But she said the same thing recently. A few months back, I think she said a similar thing. Similar thing. She changing her tune? She's not changing her tune. I understand to a certain extent where she's coming from, to a certain extent, but how can you say the Holocaust was not a systematic eradication of a certain group of people? That's kind of insane. It's a stupid thing to say. And they went against Gypsy. You don't think, okay, they also killed a whole bunch of Gypsies also. And other people, and cripples and whatever. Okay. This was not a systematic destruction of a nation like by the Jews. To the extent where we mentioned last week, how things can get to a person's head is general. Take your his name be blotted out, may rot wherever he is. They were losing the war. They needed, munitions and people to be sent to the front. And these cattle cars. Because they're losing the war. They need reinforcement. And what did Hitler say? What did he say over here? He said, that's not the goal of the war. The goal of the war, the goal of what we're doing is to exterminate as many Jews as possible. That's the goal. So even to the extent of his own people, he killed because he had this idea in his head that what's the whole point of the war is to kill all the Jews. Even against his own people. So you got wackos like that. But it was a systematic, what was my point? That it was a systematic eradication of a people. Whether you say we're a nation, we're a race, whatever it was. He said our goal, you read Mein Kampf and translate it so many different languages. You read this book, systematic eradication of a people. Period. Nothing to talk about. I mean, still have Holocaust deniers today, but that's nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about. And she can come out and still say that. No matter how funny she was and how different, whatever movie she made and whatever, how could you listen to her after hearing such a thing? Again, what a person does in their private life, what they say, okay. There are certain things that I would say are red flags. again, we use Roger Waters as an example. Right? He said recently, I shouldn't laugh, I should really be crying. Just an idiotic statement. An idiotic statement like, I'm not against Israel. I'm not against Jews. Yeah? But he's pro-Palestinian. Well, and that by definition means you're not a Zionist. You're an anti-Zionist. That's what it means. You can't have it both ways. Now, I know secular Jews say I'm pro-Palestinian, but I believe in the state of Israel. That's a contradiction in terms. You can't have it both ways. Yeah. If you're pro-Palestinian, it means you don't believe we have a right to be here. Or you'll say I don't want to get into politics, but you'll say we have a right to be here, but they also have a right to be here. Yeah, it doesn't say that in my Torah. The Torah says clear. The land belongs to us. Right? That's Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Rashi says, in the name of his father. Why did the Torah start with Genesis chapter 1 about creation? Why did it start with Exodus chapter 12? Exodus chapter 12 is about what? It's about Rosh Chodesh, first mitzvah. It says, because the non-Jews come along and say, hey, what are you doing? Stealing our land. Stealing our land. You don't have a right to steal our land. Right? So what does Rashi say? They're not going to have a claim because God giveth, God taketh away. Why? Because God created the world. That's the answer to them. There's only one problem. But today people say, I don't care what the Bible says. Palestinians had their land taken. This is apartheid, which is insane for a lot of other reasons. Yeah. But that's their land. You stole their land. Okay, prove it. Which land did we steal? Well, the land we acquired legally. Not only that, take someone like we mentioned last week by Mark Twain, Samuel Langhorne Clemens came here in the late 1800s. Was there anything here? Nope. He wasn't a religious person by any stretch, but he says exactly what the Bible says. Israel flattened like a pancake. Flattened like a pancake. Nobody here. We're all the Palestinians. Third biggest lie in the world next to Christianity and evolution. I'll put it up there, top 3. Maybe it's 1 or 2. Yeah. Where were they? And the Ottomans were here. There was a whole people here. In the English were here. There was a whole people here. And during the Crusades, there's a whole people here. Where? It's our own fault. The Israelis made them into a people. Made them in quote unquote a nation. They never existed. Yeah. You want to follow someone who doesn't believe in the state of Israel? You want to listen to them? Okay. Right. Yeah. I would say, like, what a person does in their private life, who cares? Right? Most people say it doesn't matter. I'll follow them. I will watch them. It doesn't matter what they do. Fine. I enjoy seeing them hit a puck, shoot a basketball, whatever. Okay. Someone who says you don't have a right to exist. You don't have a right to exist, and you're a dirty dog, so to speak, or whatever they're gonna say. You can say, but I love their music. Okay, I think there's a red line here. It's not just about what they do in their private life and this and that. This is the red line. They're saying you don't deserve to exist. They're saying you don't deserve to exist. How can you listen to them? And what's the answer? What's the answer? Someone's going to throw back at me, but I like their music. What do I care what they think? Okay. So if you get their music for free, you listen to it, fine. But if they're getting money for it, I'd say use your money elsewhere. There's certain, you're gonna say, so what difference between that and they do other things? They can do other terrible things. True. This one hurts a little bit more, I would say. So this one's a little more personal. Because what they do in their personal lives, most people don't really care. They don't care. They just care what they do, what they produce. Come on, I'm going to, all right, he's not wasn't actually, he did say something anti-Semitic. This basketball player, and he had to apologize, I got suspended, whatever it was. But at the same time, what a lot of these people say, like the world is flat, it's like, come on. You ever seen an atlas? You ever learned that, you ever learned about the earth and what it is? Yeah, it's a whole crazy theory. So Torah doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't say that. Commentaries say that. Okay, so the person wants to make a statement. Good. I just want to see him shoot a basketball. Okay, fine. I'm not going to take what they say politically. And most people won't. Most people won't care less what they have to say at all. If they run for public office, okay, it's a different issue. That might be a different issue. But what they say in general, who cares? If the person comes and says, Israel doesn't deserve the land, we're oppressing these Palestinians. Some people in Congress would say, and it's apartheid, and we're murdering people and this and that, and you don't have a right to exist. You don't deserve to be there. Well, I think that's beyond the red line here. That's their opinion. They're totally wrong. But they're telling you don't have a right to exist. Even if you don't convert, Israel doesn't have a right to exist. You're stealing land, right? You still want to listen to them? Okay. I'm not saying you can't listen to them, right? I'm not saying not. You want to listen to them, listen to them. I'm saying this is worse than most things. If they're immoral and they curse and they do other things, okay. So, most people in that industry, that's what they do. Fine. You want to listen to their music, fine. Well, they're telling you don't have a right to exist, or the Jews don't have a right to exist, and they're stealing land and this and that, and much worse things. So I would think, that how could a person listen to such a person? There are classical artists out there, put out a tremendous amount of great work, great music. Yeah, they're rabid anti-Semites. Yeah. So I think you have to draw the line. Right? I would say, how could you listen to such a person? Right? You say, I like their music. Okay, that's the answer. First, I'm going to say, I don't care what they stand for. Doesn't matter what they stand for. I like their music. Okay, so you're going to equate this person or these people like professional athletes and entertainers and all that. Okay, right? I think some people would disagree and say this is below the belt. This is way below the belt. Yeah, but again, if someone says, I can live with it, so, fine. I'm just saying, I think a lot of people would say not that way. And they would say it's impossible to listen to such a person. Whatever people want to say about Roger Waters and his music, and, they still love his music. Okay, but look what he says. If you can swallow what he says, okay. Then you can swallow what he says. But, I think Jews would never listen to him. They certainly never listen to him. Some may not care. Some may be as leftist as he is. It may be worse. They may think, okay, so that's what he says. So what? I don't really believe in the state of Israel anyway. Maybe he's right. Yet secular Jews probably think he's right. But see, there's a little bit of a contradiction here. Because if you're going to follow somebody like that, and you're going to say, the Israelis stole their land, right? And we're persecuting them and all this and all that. Yeah, how can you still say, well, I'll go visit there, I'll help support it, or maybe not. How can you believe in the state of Israel if you believe in that? Can't. It's contradiction in terms. I'm not even talking about what the Bible says and all that. It's a contradiction in terms. Maybe you come and visit, maybe this and that, but you say Israel's bad. Like a lot of people say, Israel's bad. Why are they bad? Because of what they do to the Arabs. And they're living better here than in most other Arab countries, for sure. That's nothing to talk about. Yeah, but you have it. You definitely have it. If you're pro-Israel, you're not gonna have anything to do with this stuff, at all. And I know people that, secular Jews, very pro-Israel. Very, very pro-Israel. He's gonna listen to Roger Waters. I don't think so. I never don't think so. Actually, it might be a project. Maybe I'm gonna ask someone. I can't imagine. I can't imagine, because someone who's pro-Israel, they can't listen to this. They won't be able to tolerate such a person. Yeah, they'll be disgusted by such a person. But someone who's not pro-Israel doesn't necessarily believe everything, about the state of Israel and this and that. So, they'll be pro-Palestinian. If you're pro-Palestinian, you cannot be pro-Israel. They don't go hand in hand. Right? It's a contradiction in terms. Again, maybe they'll come visit Israel. Yeah, maybe they'll plant a tree. Maybe they'll give money to certain things in Israel. Okay, maybe. Doesn't mean they like what's going on. I know people like that. They have really no connection to the land. and no connection to the land at all. But but they're pro-Palestinian. Someone heard someone say, or someone told me, someone said, I can't believe like one of their kids is pro-Palestinian. I'm like, and not surprising at all. You have a secular upbringing, and you went to university, hang out with leftists. So what do you want? So they're leftists. They're Jewish leftists against their own people. And you have it all the time. It's been throughout history. It's unfortunate. It's not the non-Jewish anti-Semites are the worst. It's Jewish anti-Semites. They're causing more problems. Definitely causing more problems. So we're our own worst enemy, because people believe all the propaganda that's out there. It's very amazing what the media can do, and the power the media has. When I mentioned about this lie about the Palestinian people, it's all over the media. Everybody says the same thing. To these maybe these right-wing channels or whatever, but everyone's really saying this. They're perpetuating the same lie. That's what Arabs do. They lie. That's their nature. Yeah, so perpetuating the same lie. Okay, this is going on for years. For years. Remember, I gave like a mini course to people many years ago, showing what the media says and what the truth is. They do like once a week. Open up a newspaper, see what they say, analyze it. Analyze it according to what the Torah says. Analyze what the truth is. They're all the same. You got plenty of, you have people here. I'm not going to say it's a majority by any stretch, but you have Israelis. Let's say, an Arab kills somebody. They blow somebody up or whatever. They themselves get killed. They will go to some people will go to the Arab's house, console the parents because of everything Israel did. That is absolute insanity. It happens. Secular says, yeah, I understand. It's because the Israeli government's fault, and you were oppressed, and and they're there to help support that person blew themselves up and killed other innocent people, or they got killed in whatever it was, wherever they died. Yeah, you're going to console the parents as an Israeli? Come on. You're going to say you're making that up? Nope. It happens. I'm not going to say it's a lot of people and it's a ton of people, but it happens. It definitely happened. That's insanity. That's Judaism gone all the way to the bottom. That's what happens. Either we raise ourselves up to the top, or we go all the way to the bottom, nothing in between. But that's insane. That is that's totally insane. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, you never know what discussing these classes here. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop here, and it looks like we did actually finish chapter 16. Well, it only took 200 hours to do it or more. So we're going to hit chapter 17 next Sunday with God's help. So anyone has any questions, you can find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism on YouTube. There I have videos on Torah portion of the week, Q&As, Book of Leviticus Chapter 16, Chapter 15, controversial issues. Anyone has any questions, send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBIChaimCoffman@gmail.com.